Hi, I'm Vivian. I'm a violin teacher based in Greensboro, North Carolina, and today we're going to learn how to tune our violin using both fine tuners and pegs. Why do we have to tune our instrument? We have to tune our instrument because the metal strings are held in place using tension, not glue, not anything else. So with changing temperatures, time, using our instrument, like playing on it, making the strings vibrate, our strings can slip out of tune. So each string must be in tune for us to be able to play our pieces and have what we play sound beautiful. Out of tune strings will mess up our intonation, which we have worked so hard to acquire. When we tune, we always start with our A string first. On your instrument, you'll find fine tuners on the tailpiece, usually one for each string. However, I have a full-size violin, and many full-size instruments like mine will only have a fine tuner on the E string, in which case you'll have to use the pegs to adjust the lower strings. The fine tuners are for adjusting the pitch of the string only a little bit, while the pegs adjust the pitch a lot. I'm going to show you how to tune using both the pegs and the fine tuners. I'll show you how the fine tuner works, but then when you tune your A through G strings, if you have fine tuners on those, and if you're a beginner to the instrument, I would recommend using the fine tuners and leaving the pegs alone until you're more comfortable with tuning in general, and then just letting your teacher make large adjustments. But for the sake of thoroughness for this video, I'm going to teach you how to do both because eventually you're going to need to know how to do both. Alright, so tune our instrument. We can either use a tuner with a needle that will tell you whether the pitch is in tune, sharp, which is too high, or flat, which is too low. I recommend using a tuner with a needle, like a digital tuner, for beginners. It's just going to be the most straightforward to use. So, to tune, remember we start with the A string. So, we're going to play our A string with a long, steady bow. I'm going to get my tuner out and show you what that's going to look like. Right here. This is my tuner. And I'll play for you with it, and you can see the needle move. Okay, so my tuner's telling me that my A is quite flat, it's quite low. So if I was tuning with a fine tuner, what I would need to do is take the fine tuner and turn it to the right, because right is going to make the string tighter, which is higher or sharper. Turning the screw to the left will make the string looser, lower in pitch, or flatter in pitch. So, but because my string needs to go higher, that's what I'm going to do. So if I had a fine tuner, I would turn the fine tuner a couple of turns, not more than 2 or 3, because we run the risk of overcompensating if we turn it more than that. So we're only going to turn it once or twice. And then you would play again and recheck against your tuner so that you could see if your adjustment was enough or not, or if you needed to adjust some more, or if you overcompensated. Okay, so now I'm going to tune my violin for real because I don't have fine tuners on my instrument. So I'm going to tune using the pegs now, okay? Now the pegs, your A string peg, your A string peg is going to be on the right side. If you're facing the instrument, if you're holding it in playing position, your A string peg is going to be right here. If you're not sure where the A string peg is, all you have to do is look at your string and follow it all the way up into the scroll, and then you can see, oh, it's wound around this one. No, this one right here. I know my rights and lefts. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my fine tuner again. And when we turn the peg, we want to turn it so that the string is loose, so it's lower. That means that you're going to turn the pegs like towards you. You want to like loosen the string and then tighten the string. That's going to help you be able to tune the string without it sticking, or especially for the E string, without the risk of it snapping. Snapping strings don't happen very often. That's only if the string is old, but it's still a risk, so we try to avoid it. So we tune it down first, and then we tune it up. And when we're going to tune up, we're going to push upward, like turn the peg, and also we're going to shove it into our instrument gently. Okay, now my pegs have a tendency to slip, so if that's you, you can take your instrument down and balance it on your leg. Hold it towards you so that you can like see the pegs and the scroll, and then you'll be able to adjust the string and also push into the scroll a little bit easier. And you can pluck the string while you are pushing. Okay, now let's see what the tuner thinks of this. So, here's my tuner. Much better. Sorry, there's some glare. It's still saying that I'm a tiny bit off, so I am going to adjust that. Remember, going down first and then adjusting upward. Not quite. I have to check several times as I'm adjusting. Yay, we're within 1 hertz, one cent off, so I'm going to call that good. Now, after we've tuned our A string, and we've taken a painstaking time making sure it's as in tune as possible, now we can move on to it's usually you move on to the lower strings and then you do E last. So we're going to do that. We're going to do our D string. I forgot to mention, when you are tuning using your fine tuners, you aren't going to need to turn it to the left and then to the right for like loosening the string and then tightening it. That only applies to the pegs. The fine tuners are operated on a screw rather than on a peg, so it's a little easier to manipulate the tension that way, which is why fine tuners are so convenient. Okay, now we're going to move on to the lower strings. I'm going to tune my D just with my pegs, but first I'm going to show you again what it's going to look like if you had a fine tuner on your D. So let's play our D. I'm going to hold up my tuner so you can see the needle moving. The needle is to the left of center, which means that the D is too low, and we want the needle to be in the middle. So we have to adjust our D. So what you would do if you had a fine tuner was you would play your long slow bow on D string while looking at your tuner, and then you're also going to turn the screw of your fine tuner a couple of turns to the right until your string was in tune. And if you found you overcompensated, you can always adjust back. But since I have pegs, we're gonna see what it looks like with pegs now. My D is too low. I need to adjust it higher, but first I need to loosen the string, which means I'm going to make the D go quite low down to a D flat and then go up again. I over adjusted. It's too sharp now, as my tuner says. My D is too high. So now I can adjust a little lower. Good. And I am within 5 cents, which is awesome. I want to get a little more precise though. So, and I know something about my instrument, and it is that my lower strings, my lower pegs, tend to slip. They tend to get out of tune very easily. I have a hard time pushing them into the scroll so that they stay. It takes a lot of elbow grease. So, because I want to decrease the pitch, there's something I can do to help decrease the pitch a very small amount without having to turn my screw. Just a little hack for you. And that is taking the string with your second or third finger, your middle or your ring finger, and like pushing the string to the side very gently so that you are kind of loosening the string. You're putting a lot of pressure on the string so it loosens. This is why if you pits too hard on a string, it actually pulls the string out too, which is why you don't want to pluck super with a lot of force. You want to pluck gently. So, but I know that I can lower the pitch of my string by doing this, so I'm going to do that a little bit. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Okay, I'm going to check my D again. And it is right in the middle. I'm going to call that good, and I'm going to check it. This is a little more of an advanced tuning technique, and this is something that you'd do if you were not as much of a beginner, but to double check to make sure that my violin is in tune, you can play 2 strings together, and the sounds should blend into each other. If you hear like tiny little oscillations in the sound, that means it's out of tune. But I'm looking for a blend in the sound. I heard some oscillations, which is why I adjusted my D one more time to make it match my A string. Because we always want to match our strings. At the end of the day, we want to match our strings to our instrument, to the rest of our strings, and not to just like an arbitrary tuner. Okay, now we're going to move on to the G string. Let's play our G with a nice long bow. Okay, too low. And I know that also because I can play with the D. And the sound is going to oscillate. We're going to play the G, and we would play it with our long bow and tune our tuner, turn our screw to the right, clockwise, to make the pitch go higher. Here we go with the scroll. Loosening first. And I can check it with my D. It appears my D is a little too flat. Sometimes that happens if we are moving all of our strings around. They can come out of tune while we're tuning the others. So it's good after you're finished to do one last check of all of your strings to make sure that everything is in tune and agrees with each other. I've discovered that mine does not, so I am going to just recheck and make it a little quicker so that I can get on to tuning the E string. Alright, all of my strings are in agreement with each other, so I know that my violin is, I'm satisfied with the tuning of my violin. Now I'm going to tune the E string, because remember I said that our E string is usually the string we tune last. So with our E, again, we're going to get our fine tuner, excuse me, we're gonna get our tuner, our digital tuner. And this one I do have a fine tuner, so I can show you what that's like. We don't usually use the peg to tune the E string unless it's really off, because look at how thin that E string is. It's a very thin string, and like I was saying before, it runs the risk of breaking more than the others because it's so thin. So we don't use the peg too much to tune the E string, mostly because we have the fine tuner, so it's not needed as much. The E string is under a lot of tension because it is very thin and very high, and so we want to err towards using the fine tuner and only using the peg if it's really out, like it sounds like a D or an F or something. Okay, or a C. All right, so I'm gonna use just my fine tuner for this one. I won't need the peg unless something goes really awry. Too low. Turn to the right. So actually, something interesting just happened just now. Remember how I said we don't use the peg too much to tune the E unless it's really off? There's another circumstance that we just came up against, and it is that when your fine tuner is very tight and it's tightened to the point where you can't tighten it anymore, then it's time to use your peg. And your teacher will do this for you if this happens, so you don't need to worry about it. But if you're like an intermediate student and you're starting to learn how to use the pegs and tune yourself, then this is good to know how to do. What you're going to do is you're going to loosen the E string, and then so that you can get it to move around with your peg. And then we're going to tune it so that the string is around like an F natural. Why is that? Because our tuner, our fine tuner, is too it's screwed in a lot, so it's stuck. We can't tune it any higher, and we need to be able to tune it higher or lower. So we're going to tune the string up and then loosen the screw. So we're going to do that now. I'm going to tune the E string up to an F first by loosening. See? And then I'm holding the string with my thumb just to keep things from breaking. I've had strings break in my face before, so it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen, so safety. And then slowly turning the peg. Now we're at the back of the E. We're going to go slightly above the E. Around an F natural. That's a little lower than an F natural. And then we're going to take the screw and we're going to loosen it if it's too tight, which it is. Loosen, 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 loosen. Ooh, that feels better. It's too low, so I'm actually going to use the peg to adjust, so I have lots of room in my fine tuner to use it. Okay, that's around an E. Now we're going to see if it's in tune. Oh, look at that. I'm a genius. All right, let's check out the A, because no matter what the tuner says, our instrument needs to agree. Obviously, in an ideal world, we would want our instrument to agree with the tuner and with itself, but if you live in a very dry or cold climate, or if you don't have a lot of time to tune, you want your strings, and if it's just you practicing, you want your strings to agree with each other. If you are practicing with others, like if you're in an orchestra or if you're in a string quartet or something like that, then you are going to want to spend more time tuning because you have more people involved and everybody has to tune to the same A. Okay, I hope that this tutorial was helpful. Let me know down below in the comments if you have any questions, or you can feel free to email me with any questions. If you are one of my students, I will see you in our next lesson, and if not, I hope you enjoyed this video, and feel free to reach out to me if there's something else that you would like me to cover. Alright, take care.